Have you ever tried to make a strong red paint and instead of getting that deep saturated red you wanted, your color came out pink, brick, brownish, dull or too light? This is one of the biggest mistakes people make when formulating strong colors. Think like, if I want a strong red, I should simply add more red. But professional color formulation doesn't work that way, because when you are manufacturing paint, the amount of pigment is only one part of the equation. The real question is, which red are you using? How much oxide are you using? What are you using to brighten the color, and what are you deliberately leaving out? Today I am going to show you how I would approach a deep saturated post office red for a 20 liters water based paint. This is our target. We are not trying to create a bright fire engineer red, an orange red, a brick red, a brownish oxide red, or a pink red. We want a deep saturated red, and this distinction is important because color formulation is not simply red equals to more red pigment. Professional formulation is about controlling the relationship between pigment and the paint base. This is what we are going to learn. Now, this is our straighten trial, and I want you to notice something immediately. We are using two different red colorants. We are not depending only on one pigment. We have red oxide 300 grams and red pigment paste 600 grams. Then titanium dioxide is 0 gram, and finally paint base balance to 20 liters. Now let's understand why. Red oxide gives us something very important: depth, opacity, and earthly pigment character. But red oxide can also become a problem. If you are using too much, the color can start moving forward to brick color, brownish red, and terracotta red, or an earthly oxide appearances, and that is not our target. So instead of allowing red oxide to dominate the formulation, we are controlling it at 300 grams. This gives the formulation the depth contribution of oxide without making oxide the entire identity of the color. Now we come to our second colourant, which is the pigment, red pigment paste, the liquid paste, 600 grams. This becomes the stronger color driving component of our pigment. Remember, the exact strength of a pigment paste depends on the pigment chemistry, pigment concentration, and supplier formulation. So 600 grams of one red paste is not necessarily equivalent to another 600 grams of another manufacturer red paste. This is why professional paint manufacturer don't just copy formula blindly. We test, we compare, we record, and we standardize. Our objective here is to allow the red paste to carry more of the saturation while the oxide contributes the depth. That is the logic behind our 30 to 60 ratio, 30% red oxide, 60% red pigment paste, with this remaining balance coming from the paint system. That is to say, when you want to mix this particular color, you would have already created your base paint without titanium dioxide. That is why it is 0 titanium dioxide. In most cases, you can also start mixing this color from the onset. Since it is red oxide, you can now decide to pour in your red oxide into your mixing tank, you understand, and then you start stirring your water, and then you start incorporating all your other chemicals that you want to use for either your emulsion paint or your matte paint or your satin paint, you understand. So after that, when you now get to the addition of after your preservative, you can now incorporate the 600 paste, red paste color pig paste, you understand. Or you can as well add the paste earlier in your production process, because one thing is that the reason why paste is usually added at the ending after your final paint production is for you to see the color reflection. You might add it before, and after you add your acrylic, you get to find out that the color will not actually give you that color you want. So that is why it is usually advised to add at the last stage. But you can also try either of these production process. Now, this is probably the most important lesson in today's training. Titanium dioxide is 0 gram. And why? Because titanium dioxide is a powerful white pigment. It provides whiteness, opacity, brightness, hidden power, and lightning scatter. But when you are trying to maintain a deep saturated color, unnecessarily titanium can work against you. It can make a strong red look lighter, less saturated, or more pastel. So for this particular color target, we are deliberately saying no titanium dioxide needed. That doesn't mean titanium dioxide is bad. It means every raw material must have a purpose. If the purpose of this batch is a deep saturated red, we don't automatically add white pigment just because we are making paint. That's manufacturing thinking. Before introducing the colorant, make sure your paint base is already properly manufactured and stable. Your base should have proper dispersion, stable viscosity, suitable pH balance, compatible binder system, appropriate deforming, preservative, and surfactant compatibility with the pigment paste. Do not assume every pigment paste is compatible with every paint base. Always perform a laboratory compatibility test first. Now, the color addition. Stage 1, your weighing of 300 red gram. Do not estimate. Do not use 1 cup. Do not use approximately half a kilo. Professional color matching requires accurate weighing. Step 2, weighing of the 600 gram red pigment paste. Again, measure accurately. Step 3, titanium dioxide 0 gram. Do not add it automatically. Please don't add at all. Now, we move over to the dispersion and the mixing. Add your colorant gradually while the paint base is under suitable mixing. Allow sufficient mixing time for the colorant to distribute uniformly. Please take note. Do not just pour your color and then you decide that it has blended properly. For red oxide in particular, proper dispersion is important. Poor dispersion can produce shrinkage, color variation on the wall, floating, settling of the paint, weak color development, and batch-to-batch inconsistencies. The goal is not simply to make the liquid look red. The goal is uniform color development. Now, we bring the batch to its final volume. Remember, balance to 20 liters does not mean blindly adding another fixed quantity of water. The colorants themselves occupy volume and contribute mass. So you formulate the base appropriately and then bring the finished product to the required final volume. After adjustment, mix thoroughly again. Then check viscosity, pH level, appearances, color uniformity, stability, and application properties. This is where many beginners make another mistake. They look into the bucket and say, yes, that's the color. No, don't do that. You need a draw down. By applying the paint to a suitable tested panel or a wall using a consistent flame thickness, allow it to dry completely, please. Then inspect it under constant lighting. Why? Because wet paint and dry paint can look differently, and the finer subtract, flame thickness, shine, and lightning all influence the visual appearances. This is where you become a color techniker rather than simply a paint mixer. Now, we are still looking at the color correction and what if the color is wrong. Like I said, this is where you become a color technique rather than simply a paint mixer. So now, color problem 1, too brick, too earthly, that is too dark or too brownish, you understand? If the color moves towards brick or brown, do not immediately add titanium dioxide. The first thing to investigate is whether the red oxide contribution is too high. Your next trial could reduce the oxide while maintaining the red paste contribution. Problem number 2, too light. Again, don't automatically add more titanium. We are trying to preserve depth. First, investigate pigment strength, pigment loading, base strength, and the oxide to paste ratio. Now, problem number 3, too dark. Now we investigate carefully. A small controlled amount of titanium dioxide may be tested if the product application requires slightly greater brightness. But Don't jump from 0 to 100 gram titanium dioxide. Correct laboratory correction. For example, 0 gram, 5 gram, 10 gram, then compare the dried sample. Now, problem number 4, too orange. If your red paste itself is warm orange shade, changing the oxide ratio may not completely solve the problem. That tells you something important. The pigment itself may need to change. This is where professional color formulation eventually requires understanding pigment chemistry, not just color name. Now, this is the lesson I want you to remember. Don't just memorize 300 gram red oxide, 600 gram red paste, 0 titanium dioxide, because that is not manufacturing knowledge. The real knowledge is understanding why 300 gram, because we want depth without allowing oxide to dominate. Now, why 600 gram? Because the red paste is carrying more of the saturation. Why 0 titanium dioxide? Because we are protecting the depth and saturation of the target color. And why do we test? Because pigment strength varies. This is how manufacturers think. At Glina Paint Education, we don't just make color, we build a color control system formula. Know what you are putting into the batch, which is your formula. Test. Number 2, make a laboratory down test by applying your paint on the wall. The third is standardizing. Record the successful ratio and produce it again. Your final color record should contain your color name, post office red, your company color code. For us is Glina color code 3534, your batch size, which is 20 liters, red oxide 300 gram, red paste 600 gram, titanium dioxide 0 gram, base balance to 20 liters. Then record the actual supplier product, grade, pigment strength, batch number, and final adjustment. That becomes your master color standard. If you're learning paint manufacturing, don't stop at copying formula. Learn how to think like a manufacturer, because when you understand the function of every raw material, you can create colors, troubleshooting failures, control consistency, and build product that your customer can trust. Want to go deeper into color? Join our Glina Color Lab and Finish Level 2 membership and explore more professional color selection technicals, color formulation strategy, and expert system like this. Every month we'll take you through new color selection and practical color matching technique to help you understand color behind just mixing pigment. Go to the video description and click become a member to join level 2. Don't just make color, learn to master them. This is Glina, helping you master paint and chemical production and build your own successful brand. Until the next training, keep learning, keep manufacturing, keep building. Glina Paint Education, you learn, you understand, you manufacture, and you succeed.